You start in Making Love at the point where Zach is ready to come out, and you don't give us too many clues as to why, what really got Zach to this point. Maybe you could comment a little about either the woman with the mastectomy or his father's and the relationship with him.
Yeah. Well, I think what I was going for was a sense of a character who had really worked very hard at repressing it, at denying his true feelings. And he was reaching a point in his life, around age 30, where he was starting to, reevaluate where he was going in terms of his sexuality. And I think what I tried to get across was that his real fear about coming out was not in terms of being labeled a homosexual, but the fear was that he would never be able to have the kind of satisfying emotional relationship that he had with the woman he was married to. And, one tends to perceive of homosexuality as being not that prone to relationship, to involvement, and I think he was aware of this. And when we see at the end of the film the sequence where she goes to this man's apartment, somebody who had been with, I think at that point we, as an audience, are forced to call back from our knowledge of Zach and suddenly say, aha, this is what he was frightened of. This kind of situation where he would, have this kind of anonymous encounter, this kind of anonymous one-night stand. So I think through his involvement with Harry Hamlin, where he was able to experience an emotional relationship, a relationship that gratified him on those levels, that this finally allowed him to then come in contact with his own sexuality and kind of free him of the repression that he was going through.
The sections of the film where Claire and Bart talk,
right,
either directly to the camera or whatever, what I'm asking you is, who are they talking to? The camera, a psychiatrist, what?
I'll tell you, Nick, I was going through I was trying to create a device that had never been seen on the screen before. I was looking for a unique way to tell the story, and I set up these characters talking to the camera so that they were placed in a kind of a limbo situation whereby they're talking directly to the camera, and what that does is set you, the viewer, up as either shrink, or I prefer to perceive it as confidant, so that when you have this direct one-on-one relationship between character on screen and you as the viewer, what it does is create an intimacy. It makes you, the viewer, then privy to that character's private thoughts and feelings, so that you become, in a sense, closer to the character, and that you can somehow understand and accept and go through the same dynamics that they're going through.
Were your speeches for those sections shifted around in the final cut, or did
No,
they occur?
actually, they were kept very close to the way I had written them.
Huh.
Yeah, in fact, the final film as a whole very closely approximates the intentions that I had in the writing of the script, which is very rare, by the way.
It really is.
Yeah,
right?
for any writer to say
And
that.
they conceivably could have been shifted very easily
Very
from
easily,
here to there.
yes. But you see, what I was going for was a juxtaposition between what you're hearing and what you're seeing. In other words,
Right.
In terms of the concepts of romance and the illusions of romance that both these characters really perpetuate. What you're hearing and then what you're seeing is not necessarily the same, but it's still a common in terms of the juxtaposition.
Sure. Are we to assume that there is any criticism of the marriage built into the first half hour of the film? It seems so sweet.
Well, what I was going for, again, was it's sweet because these two people really survive through a set of illusions about romance, about marriage. And I think this dual set of illusions really fostered the whole relationship. I think we get that when we see the clip of Cary Grant and Deborah Carr.
Right.
The fact that our whole concepts of romance are largely defined by the movies we see, and these two people allowed these illusions to perpetuate, and they really kind of lived by the standards that everything would be all right, everything would work out, that they would ride off in the sunset together. And it's when suddenly the reality of this man's sexuality comes into play, that they are forced to reevaluate, you know, their whole definitions
Sure.
of romance, and they have to deal with this, and it's shattering, but it's something they ultimately have to come to terms with.
How do you feel about the suggestion that Zach's coming to grips with this problem, except for telling Claire, is just too easy, that it makes coming out into the gay world seem almost simple? You don't have any objectionable behaving gays in the film. They have no children to complicate the matter, so that it all seems fairly easy for Zach.
Oh, I don't think it's easy for him. I think,
Go ahead.
you know, I think he carries enormous guilt. You know, I think we see in the sequence with the family. I mean, you know, we get a feeling of what it was like to grow up in that family, and that kind of authoritative figure that Arthur Hill plays. I think from that scene, we're able to understand why he's been had to repress these feelings for that long. I mean, the father imposes this strict regulatory kind of existence on the character, and I think, you know, through that we can understand the angst and the anxiety and the fear, the turmoil that he obviously had to carry with him through all these years. One of the reasons that he would hide behind the wife and the romantic myths that he does. So that, you know, I don't believe it was easy for him at all. I think, you know, it was very painful for him, and only through his interaction with the Hamlin character is he able to be freed of these guilts and these fears and come to terms with it. Now, in terms of the family situation, I don't go into it in the film because I really wanted to concentrate on the three characters,
Right.
and that demands its own movie.
Sure.
You know?
Well, it works.
Thank you.
It works.
Thank you. I
Thank you.
appreciate that.
Thank you for doing the interview.
You bet. Okay.
Stop tape. All righty.
God, that was fast.